Have you ever heard the voice of a ghost? Well, dear living beings on Earth, you are hearing one now, and soon you will be hearing those of two more. Let me explain ever so briefly about the story you are going to hear. In the heart of a bustling city where skyscrapers scrape the clouds and dreams hover just out of reach, a tale of a runaway boy unfolds, woven through the voices of both the living and the long gone. The teenager wanders, a lone wanderer in a world that seems both vast and constricting, chasing after elusive shadows of money, food, shelter, and answers about escaping poverty. But little does he know, his path is about to intersect with those of three ghostly figures from a bygone era, their voices carried on the whispering winds of time. As the runaway boy's journey intertwines with the spectral trio, he finds himself embarking on a quest. Oh, for something far more precious than just a pocketful of coins and a few bowls of ice cream. He is searching, and will he receive, will he find the elusive key to genuine happiness? And so begins a tale of interwoven destinies, where the echoes of past and present converge, guiding a young heart in search of treasures far more valuable than any material wealth, the riches of friendship, wisdom, and the boundless expanse of the human spirit. His steps lead him to an unexpected intersection, where four venerable structures loom before him: America's first bank, America's inaugural debt prison, America's millionaire secretary, and its earliest mental hospital. Yet it's not the imposing facades that send shivers down his spine, but the ghost, one, which is me, of three once upon a time America's wealthiest men. Could myself and the other two spectral guardians hold the key to the young man's salvation?
It may be hard to believe, but what I'm about to share is a true story that is unfolding in my life right now. I assure you, every word is genuine. If this were someone else's account, especially a teenager like me, I might doubt its authenticity. Yet, I'm willing to bear the skepticism because what I'm about to recount is as real as it gets. Until 2 hours ago, I was oblivious to the intricacies of banks, indifferent to credit cards, and uninterested in financial security. Living in debt and money-making schemes were concepts I could only identify with because of my parents' money problems. And trust me, I wasn't a good student. American history classes in high school, including the history of American banks and credit cards, and stock markets and businesses and rich Americans, were of no interest to me. Then, this unbelievable situation, this frightening experience I'm living. The events unfolding in the past 2 hours are nothing short of mind-boggling. Amidst a group of individuals, though it's a stretch to consider all but one of them as being real, I find myself thinking I desperately need a potential shift in my teenage lifestyle. Among these strange characters, one is a fellow teenager, although the term seems scarcely fitting. She assumes the role of an educational tour guide, stationed outside of America's first American bank built in the late 1700s. From there, she just guided me through the streets of Philadelphia to the site of an 1800s debtor's jail adjacent to a prison. Then I ended up visiting a grave and a cemetery. This 2-hour journey resulted in me doing something I had never before experienced. I fainted! Now I am sitting in front of a hospital museum, and I don't have a clue about... Well, let me tell you what just happened to me, because I'm searching for answers, advice, and maybe more than anything, besides food, hope. Enter my new routine, roaming. I've been drifting aimlessly from one place to another, a homeless teenager, a genuine beggar, pleading for money just to survive. Never in my wildest dreams as a child did I envision saying, "When I grow up, I want to be a beggar." Yet, here I was, trapped in the consequences of my own uninformed choices. Then, 2 hours ago, like I said, I found myself strolling down 3rd Street in the historic district known as Old Philadelphia. It was a considerable distance from my hometown, and as I wandered, I stumbled upon a group of teenagers who appeared much more cleaner and better dressed than I was at that moment. Aware of my less than ideal condition, I refrained from approaching them. Frankly, I didn't smell so good, but lingered close enough to overhear the animated tour guide engaging with the group. The disconcerting nature of this unfolding narrative lies in its various layers. It all begins with the 1700s bank, shrouded in legend, rumored to be haunted by the ghost of none other than Mr. Stephen Girard, one of the wealthiest individuals in America. Legend has it that the ghost of Mr. Stephen Girard, who was a billionaire and considered the richest man in America, whose money financed the American-British War of 1812, when the British soldiers nearly burned the White House to the ground, is inside the bank. Picture this: me, a teenager, found myself homeless, oscillating between unforgiving streets and the temporary refuge of vagabond friends, with equally dismal circumstances. They say birds of a feather flock together, and that's where I found myself. No job, having left school before expulsion or failure, surviving through panhandling and living the life of a genuine beggar. My biological parents, well, that's another tale. Suffice it to say, they were ensnared in the quagmire of poverty and debt, clueless about managing money and perpetually unhappy, which, unsurprisingly, extended to my own state of mind. In my pursuit of happiness, I inadvertently embraced the same path to unhappiness: poverty, homelessness, and unemployment. I embarked on a journey, naively adopting my parents' misguided approach to life and money. This manifested in a lack of knowledge about money, how to earn it, save it, and spend it wisely. Ignorance became my downfall. What captivated me, to be completely honest, was the unexpected sight of a teenage girl serving as their tour guide. The group of adolescents surrounding her appeared to be around 13 to 17 years old, while she exuded an air of maturity, seemingly 18 or 19. Her striking appearance may have influenced my decision to stay and listen, but it was her articulate and scholarly communication style that truly intrigued me. Clearly educated, she spoke with intelligence, and I found myself engrossed in her presentation. Despite my initial reluctance, I couldn't help but notice her occasional glances in my direction. However, I dismissed these observations as wishful thinking or a product of my own self-consciousness. In truth, I felt out of place, my appearance reflecting my recent lack of hygiene and financial hardship. Having refrained from a shower for nearly a week, and unwilling to spend my limited funds on laundry, I found myself adrift, without any clear direction, goals, or ambition. While physically located on 3rd Street in Old Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, I felt mentally, emotionally, socially, and certainly financially adrift and lost. She gestured toward the imposing structure before us, where a sign boldly proclaimed, 120 South 3rd Street, the First Bank of the United States. The building exuded a sense of grandeur, adorned with large white pillars reminiscent of an ancient Greek temple. Tilting my head back, I glimpsed a majestic marble eagle perched atop the structure. It became evident that the bank was not merely closed for the day, but had been long shuttered. Subsequent investigation revealed its closure extended back in time, emphasizing the enduring nature of its vacancy. As she spoke, her words held a captivating power that drew my attention. Born in 1760, Mr. Stephen Girard faced a humble beginning with limited education, and the mark of a childhood snowball fight left him blind in one eye. Enduring taunts, ridicule, and bullying from other children, he navigated the challenges of his youth by embarking on a seafaring journey throughout his childhood and teenage years. His name was Stephen Girard, an individual who would eventually ascend to become America's wealthiest man, attaining the status of a billionaire. Notably, after founding the first bank in America, providing crucial financing during the 1812 war between America and Britain, and establishing programs dedicated to assisting runaway, orphaned, homeless, and abused children and teens, he achieved widespread fame. However, in a twist of fate, his legacy now persists beyond the tangible, as he is rumored to haunt the very bank he founded. Legend has it that he searches for today's homeless, runaway, abandoned, neglected, and abused children and teens, as though driven by an otherworldly concern for their well-being. And there, I swear, I truly swear, I saw him, upstairs, gazing down at us. It was me he was fixated on. Despite the skeptics who, since I was like 6 years old, insisted I required counseling, medication, or therapy for being myself, and others attributing it to an overactive imagination, I can emphatically assert that I witnessed him peering down at me from the upper window of the bank. Initially, I believed my stomach was playing tricks on my mind due to hunger. I considered the possibility that the odor of my unwashed clothes was clouding my thoughts. Before fully grasping the reality, panic set in, as I feared losing my sanity. Imagining a scenario where I'd do something irrational, prompting screams and calls to 911, the tour guide would summon an ambulance carting me off to a mental hospital. However, my fears were unfounded. It dawned on me that the once billionaire founder of the bank, Mr. Stephen Girard, was staring at me from an upper window. Though unfamiliar with ghosts, I was convinced it was him. As I stared, the tour guide continued her narrative to oblivious students engrossed in her words. The guide spoke of Girard's challenging childhood, marked by poverty, social exclusion, and deformity, making him a target for bullying. Closing my eyes, I hoped the ghost would vanish upon reopening them, but it persisted, fixated on me. His troubled past resonated with mine, both marked by dysfunctional families, financial struggles, and societal alienation, leading me into the foster care system. I pondered why Girard's ghost lingered within the closed bank. Was it counting money? Despite visiting a bank only a handful of times, my parents' tumultuous relationship with finances left lasting memories. Their constant arguments over misuse of credit cards and struggles with employment created a turbulent home environment. My father's job instability and my mother's hustle for money, her primary talent, led to a cycle of misery and separation. In the midst of their financial woes, I found myself skipping school, too embarrassed to seek free lunches. Despite their struggles, I recognized my parents as troubled, not inherently bad. The interplay of mental and financial problems was a puzzle with no clear beginning. I recall Miss Johnson, one of my high school teachers, emphasizing in health class that each individual possesses both a conscious and subconscious mind. She explained that these two facets of our mind don't always align. Many instances come to mind when I found myself hungry and desperate for money while on the streets. A time when the disparity between my conscious and subconscious thoughts became apparent. My conscious mind yearned for financial means, a simple necessity to put food on my plate. However, my subconscious harbored a deep-seated aversion to money, as it served the catalyst for my parents' perpetual misery and discord. A poignant memory, etched into my mind, unfolded during a Christmas past when my grandmother, attempting to spread joy, bestowed a gift upon my mother. Instead of expressing gratitude, my mother erupted in frustration, berating her with, "What kind of cheap crap is this?" My grandmother, resilient to such outbursts, responded in a hushed tone. Someone needs to teach you how to be a gracious recipient. Obviously, I failed to do so. Reflecting on this incident, I acknowledged an unsettling resemblance between my mother and myself. Through the trials of life, I've learned the importance of uttering a sincere thank you to those who extend a helping hand, even when I find myself in the vulnerable position of street begging. Regrettably, generosity in receiving doesn't come naturally to me. Lost in contemplation, I tuned out the words of the tour guide, my mind preoccupied with the past. However, I couldn't escape the penetrating gaze of the ghostly figure, the lingering spirit of a billionaire banker, fixated on me through the bank window. His intense stare felt more like a glare, and I foresaw a sleepless night ahead, whether on the unforgiving streets or in a desolate park, haunted by the specter of this unsettling encounter. As I gazed into the window, his spectral figure replaced by the apparitions of men, women, and children, all resembling the throes of death, despite being deceased. I overheard the tour guide imparting wisdom to the teenagers.
During the yellow fever epidemic that ravaged Philadelphia in 1793, claiming thousands of lives, Mr. Stephen Girard allocated his wealth to pay doctors, nurses, and family members. He sustained the operation of the hospital with his financial backing, procured sustenance for children orphaned by the epidemic, and personally cared for over 3,000 individuals in their final moments. As a teenager, Mr. Stephen Girard was a sour-tempered, rugged, morose boy who, as a billionaire bank owner and humanitarian, always reflected on his youth, remarking, "I never imagined I would rise to be a man of importance." He lived by a motto: "I became the architect of my own fortune, the creator of my destiny."
At one point, it felt like I was on the verge of losing my sanity. In the depths of my desperation, I grappled with the realization that my hallucinations were a result of extreme hunger. With a mere $1.25 in my jeans pocket, not even enough for a candy bar, I faced the dilemma of either begging outside of a store or resorting to a more drastic measure. Overwhelmed by weakness and impatience, I contemplated a regrettable decision: physically assaulting someone to snatch their wallet or purse. The term "hit someone up" felt like an ironic misnomer. It was more like "hit someone down." However, a sudden wave of shame hit me like a gut punch. The juxtaposition of begging one moment and contemplating theft the next filled me with self-loathing. In that vulnerable moment, I yearned for the simplicity of owning a credit card. The idea of having a tangible representation of financial stability seemed like an unattainable dream. Seating myself on a park bench, I fought back tears and suppressed the urge to scream out in frustration. The realization struck that my current predicament was a consequence of my choices: dropping out of school, wandering aimlessly, enduring hunger, and associating with deviant peers. While blaming my parents might have been easy, the truth was that I chose the path of a teenage vagabond. Gazing at a group of teens, a tour guide, and a historic closed bank in the distance, my thoughts turned to the possibility of encountering the ghost of Mr. Stephen Girard at the window. Motivated by an inexplicable urge, I decided to return to the scene. Perhaps a glimmer of hope lingered within me, anticipating that the teens might show compassion and offer financial assistance. Alternatively, a fanciful desire lingered to engage with the ghost, bombarding him with questions about his entrepreneurial success and philanthropy in the 1700s and 1800s. As I retraced my steps towards the bank, questions about how I would handle a fortune in the bank crossed my mind. Would I follow in Girard's benevolent footsteps or succumb to the temptation of selfish indulgence? As I walked down the bustling street, an eerie sensation gripped me, as if a mysterious man's voice echoed in the air. Repeatedly, I scanned my surroundings, vigilant for any sign of someone trailing me. Amidst the hurried pedestrians jostling in front and behind me, the ambient chatter of people resonated from all directions. Yet, distinct from the cacophony, a man's voice seemed to penetrate both of my ears simultaneously. I recall his poignant words, recounting a harrowing tale from the yellow fever epidemic.
As the city faced an exodus, churches stood abandoned. The scent of vinegar hung in the air, a desperate attempt at a rumored makeshift vaccine. A pervasive atmosphere of avoidance enveloped everyone, with closed stores, scarce food and medicine, and a prevailing sense of despair. I, once a runaway orphan, now a figure of significance and wealth, used my resources to combat death, extending a helping hand to those in anguish. My past was marked by profound sorrow, an insane wife who spent her last quarter century in an asylum, and the tragic loss of my only child, a daughter who succumbed as a baby. Despite knowing the loneliness, hunger, and confusion, I triumphed, fueled by a steadfast determination to rise above my adversities and become a man of importance. It has been written in a book about me that I pursued the acquisitions of wealth to gain renown on the benefits I would confer upon generations of homeless youth, and have them escape from becoming criminals of poverty, debt, and crime.
While much of the narrative eluded my understanding due to complex vocabulary, I found myself gazing up at the window. In that moment, it felt as if Mr. Gerard's ghost stood there, peering down at me, and I sensed the essence of the tour guide's words. I comprehended that his success as a banker aimed not only to amass wealth, but to assist those truly in need, differentiating between genuine assistance and mere monetary handouts. It dawned on me that I shared a similar mindset with my parents, desiring handouts rather than working for money. Passing by banks, I used to think they were places handing out money, only to realize they weren't willing to dispense it to me or my family. It paralleled my confusion about credit cards, people using them to fulfill desires without acknowledging the responsibility of repayment. As I stared at the ghost in the window, I believed I heard his voice addressing me.
During the yellow fever scourge, my time was spent using my money, energy, and time, performing acts of mercy, visiting and relieving the sick, comforting the afflicted, and feeding the hungry. I had the support of other wealthy individuals, and as the saying goes, birds of a feather flock together. I couldn't have made a difference without good people and financial resources. I always adhered to the principle, take care of the pennies, and the dollars will take care of themselves.
The tour guide concluded her presentation, receiving applause from the teenagers. As they dispersed in small groups, I remained alone, hungry, and without a destination. The ephemeral apparition of Mr. Gerard dissipated, leaving me in contemplation. Though tempted to approach the guide, embarrassment held me back, my unkempt appearance and lingering odor from days without a shower. I stood there, feeling like a foolish teenager who imagined encountering a ghost, echoing my father's judgment. And then I heard his voice.
I refuse to accept a life of aimless wandering and survival. I yearned for fulfillment, success, good friends, a comfortable home, stylish clothes, a reliable car, a satisfying job, and a robust bank account.
The question lingered. How did Mr. Gerard transform from an uneducated, disabled, and abused child into a wealthy banker who contributed to the welfare of others? The desire to emulate him brewed within me. though the prospect of encountering his ghost again was not something I relished. And encounter him I did. He spoke to me, revealing insights that I will share when I've sorted through what to disclose. I'm eager for my story to be authentic and not perceived as a ploy for fame or importance. The ghost of Mr. Gerard has only been the beginning of my 2-hour journey into mental and emotional confusion. What happened next is even more difficult to grasp. I should have turned away and walked down the street and never looked back at the tour guide. But when she looked up from her laptop sitting on her lap and saw me staring at the window, she approached me. I don't know what made me do it, but when I saw her walking towards me, I fumbled inside my pants pocket and turned on my cell phone to record whatever I was afraid she might say to me. Don't know why I did it.
Did you happen to notice him as well? I observed you glancing up at the window. Among the group of teenagers, all high school students, accompanied by their American history teacher, no individual stood out. The teacher, having already heard my presentation, sat across the sidewalk engrossed in a book. None of the students seemed to buy into the urban legend about Mr. Stephen Gerard's ghost wandering through the bank, searching for homeless vagabond teenagers. May I dare say, like yourself. 2 years ago, as I strolled along the streets precisely at the intersection of 6th and Prune Streets, an elderly lady captured my attention. She was delivering a speech to a group of college students on a field trip, delving into the intricacies of American economic history. Intrigued, I halted to listen. Much like you, I was grappling with the challenges of being dirty, scared, hungry, confused, and emotionally burdened, for I was a runaway homeless teenager. The lady informed us that we were standing on the grounds of one of America's initial debtor prisons. Puzzled, I had no clue about debtor prisons until she clarified. According to her, during the American Revolutionary War, there were 2 such prisons, the Prune Street Debtors Prison in Philadelphia and the Old Jail Debtors Prison in New York City. These were establishments where individuals unable to repay debts to merchants and traders were confined. The parallel to contemporary struggles with debt struck me profoundly. She went on to recount the tale of Mr. Robert Morris, one of the founding fathers who endorsed the Declaration of Independence and the U.S. Constitution. Once among the wealthiest Americans, Morris fell from grace due to imprudent financial decisions, resulting in his borrowing extensively and ultimately facing arrest. He spent nearly 4 years in the Prune Street Debtors Prison. As she detailed Morris's story, I found myself engrossed in the historical narrative. However, amidst her discourse, something extraordinary happened. I saw him, just as you encountered Mr. Stephen Gerard. Mr. Morris's ghost stood before me, clad in Revolutionary War-era attire, gazing directly at me. I was gripped by an overwhelming fear, my mind in a state of terror. It was then that I heard him speaking to me. No doubt about it, he communicated with me, just like Mr. Stephen Gerard's ghost just got done talking to you from the bank window. Mr. Morris's ghost recounted to me his past, a tale of once great success. I can still hear his voice in every word he uttered. Close your eyes and open your mind. He will be able to hear what I heard.
I was a highly accomplished man. Without my financial support, George Washington might not have achieved victory in all his battles, as my money played a crucial role in financing the exhausted and hungry American army. I was closely associated with Thomas Jefferson and Benjamin Franklin, signing both the Declaration of Independence and the U.S. Constitution. I even held the esteemed position of the first United States Senator. In my time, my wealth rivaled that of Mr. Stephen Gerard, though our paths diverged in financial wisdom. Regrettably, I squandered my wealth recklessly after the war, leading to my descent into poverty. Desperate, I resorted to borrowing money from various sources, accumulating debt that I couldn't pay. Fearing government soldiers searching for me, I hid in shame, enduring hunger and fear until my discovery and subsequent arrest. For 4 long years, I languished in the squalor of Prune Street Debtor's Prison, a place of filth, hunger, and loneliness, surrounded by others trapped in the same predicament. My family, however, stood by me through thick and thin. Despite my shameful circumstances, my wife and children remained loyal. Nevertheless, the remainder of my days was marred by a sense of shame and regret, all because I made foolish financial decisions and borrowed money that I couldn't repay.
The elderly lady conducting the presentation for the college students consistently directed her gaze toward me. Upon concluding her talk, she approached with an air of determination, and I must confess, I felt a profound sense of terror. It was as if an invisible force had anchored my shoes to the cement, and an icy current surged through my veins, rendering my legs immobile. With an unsettling certainty, she informed me that she was aware of my encounter with the apparition of Mr. Morris, asserting that she, too, frequently witnesses his spectral presence. Initially dismissing her claims as absurd, I retorted that Mr. Morris's life story unfolded centuries ago, and contemporary America had long abolished debtors' prisons. Yet she vehemently countered my assertion. She proceeded to recount recent cases where Americans faced incarceration for financial shortcomings. These individuals found themselves behind bars for a myriad of offenses, ranging from unpaid taxes and outstanding traffic tickets to fraudulent loan applications and an inability to meet court fees or fines. The tales she spun involved people ensnared by the legal system due to theft, prostitution, and domestic violence. Locking eyes with me, she pointed accusatory fingers, forewarning that failure to rectify my current trajectory could lead me to a modern-day equivalent of a debtor's prison. Overwhelmed by a sense of urgency and dread, I sprinted away, propelled by an instinctive desire to escape the ominous fate she had foretold, just as you are feeling the urge to flee from this unsettling revelation. I have transcended my former life as a poverty-stricken, street-dwelling teenage beggar, breaking free from the shackles of my parents' impoverished and criminal lifestyle. Embarking on a transformative journey, I founded my own educational storytelling tour guide business while pursuing a college education with a focus on American economic history. My aspirations extend beyond mere financial stability. I envision a future where I hold the prestigious position of a bank president, financial advisor, or financial investor, perhaps even making strides on the iconic Wall Street. Inspired by the altruism of figures like Mr. Stephen Girard and the political prowess of Mr. Morris, I am driven to become a humanitarian or even a United States Senator. Regardless of the path I choose, my unwavering commitment is to achieve unparalleled financial success, ensuring that I do not succumb to the perils of adulthood, marked by poverty or drowning in the quagmire of debt owed to credit card companies. As I navigate this ambitious journey, there is one more character, or should I say a spectral presence, that I believe you should encounter.
Absolutely not, thank you, I exclaimed, nearly stumbling over my own feet in a frantic attempt to distance myself from the peculiar girl. I'd heard more than enough, and I was utterly bewildered by the unfolding situation. Sprinting at breakneck speed, I inadvertently collided with pedestrians who berated me with shouts and curses. In my panic, I even knocked an elderly woman's grocery bag from her grasp, compounding my anxiety. The fear of imminent consequences for my reckless behavior slowed my sprint. The realization dawned on me that attracting the attention of law enforcement might result in my arrest, potentially leading to juvenile detention. My mind raced back to a previous stint in such a facility after being caught engaging in online scams. Back then, I harbored misguided aspirations of exploiting the billion-dollar business of romance scams, posing as a lonely American soldier stationed overseas seeking love and financial support. However, the weight of guilt and shame proved insurmountable, leading to my apprehension, juvenile detention, and the appointment of a probation officer who was likely on the lookout for me now. Slowing to a stop, I found myself at a loss, unsure where to turn or what to do next. Contemplating a visit to the hospital emergency room in the hopes of finding solace in medication, I questioned my sanity. Was I losing my mind, encountering a ghost from the American Revolutionary War who claimed to be a millionaire banker? And what about a 19-year-old girl who insisted on seeing the apparition of an 18th century politician and a former millionaire? Yearning for a momentary escape, I briefly entertained the idea of purchasing alcohol from a bar or liquor store, but my current circumstances and age thwarted that fleeting notion. I gasped for air, my breath erratic and labored, physically exhausted, mentally and emotionally adrift, lost in every sense of the word. The yearning to escape gripped me, though I had no destination in mind. Home, with its comforting bed and my grandmother's warm kitchen, haunted my thoughts. My grandmother, the anchor of my life, showered me with love, acceptance, and a profound sense of belonging. In moments of parental strife, I sought solace in her unwavering support. She possessed a unique strength, generous, kind-hearted, yet resolute. Her wisdom echoed in my mind, emphasizing the three essential pillars for healthy human development: a sense of being loved, a sense of belonging, and a sense of accepted identity. She provided me with all three. However, after her passing, I found myself grappling with a void, profound ache for her guidance. Huffing and puffing, I yearned to dial her number, only to be harshly reminded of her absence since my 13th year. Dazed, I surveyed my surroundings and discovered that I stood before Lauren Hill Cemetery. A wave of disorientation washed over me. How did I end up here? The ominous sign declared it to be Millionaire Row. My confusion deepened. A passing stranger, noting my bewilderment, casually remarked that millionaires rested in peace there. With a chuckle, he continued on his way, but abruptly turned back, urging me to follow him. Caught in a surreal moment, I hesitated. Was he real or a figment of my imagination? The line between reality and the unknown blurred as uncertainty enveloped me, leaving me torn between skepticism and curiosity. He refrained from making physical contact, an idiosyncrasy that curiously unsettled me, given my aversion to being touched. Striding ahead, I couldn't shake the notion that perhaps my unkempt appearance, marked by the absence of clean clothes and recent showers, prompted his deliberate distance. Navigating through the cemetery, we passed an array of tombstones, each bearing witness to the passage of time with chiseled dates, some dating back centuries. Our journey came to a pause at a particular grave. The inscription revealed the identity of Thomas Story Kirkbride. Born in 1809, died in 1883. The man turned to me, and in that moment, it was as if a cosmic lightning bolt had struck, imbuing me with inexplicable energies. I discerned, with otherworldly certainty, that this man was the spectral embodiment of the figure buried before us.
I endure across the ages as Dr. Thomas Story Kirkbride. Over the horizon is the presence of the museum of the first hospital in America, founded in 1751. This pioneering establishment, initiated by the philanthropic Benjamin Franklin and medically guided by Dr. Thomas Bond, served as a sanctuary for the marginalized. Franklin's words echoed, "I am doing good to the poor by not making them easy in poverty, but leading or driving them out of it." Dr. Bond, on the other hand, articulated its purpose: to care to the sick, impoverished, and those afflicted by mental illness. In a bygone era, those grappling with poverty and ill health faced a grim reality devoid of proper medical attention. Those afflicted with mental illnesses often found themselves ostracized by their own families, condemned to the harsh streets, or confined to debtors' prisons and impoverished farms. Many endured the cruel fate of being restrained in chains, subjected to torture, neglected, and left to navigate the world in solitude. As a frail child myself, I harbored a deep-seated fear that such a fate awaited me. However, my story unfolded differently. I remained steadfast in my pursuit of education, ultimately achieving prosperity. Contributing to the field of healthcare, I spearheaded a groundbreaking initiative as the resident physician for the Friends Asylum for the persons deprived of the use of their reason. Transforming the institution, I eschewed the conventional bleakness of cells, opting instead for an environment adorned with beauty. I introduced elements such as a library and music programs guided by the mantra, "My duty is my pleasure." Despite my financial success, I never took a salary, dedicating my efforts as a volunteer. I departed this world content in December of 1883. Had you been born during that time, when luminaries like Benjamin Franklin, Dr. Thomas Bend, and I pooled our resources, talents, and skills to establish the hospital, you might have found yourself among our beneficiaries, a downtrodden young man, perceived, perhaps erroneously, as afflicted with insanity.
Suddenly, on the horizon, I spotted two men dressed in Revolutionary War attire approaching me. I couldn't explain how, but I recognized them as Benjamin Franklin and Dr. Thomas Bond. Yet, an overwhelming sense of nausea enveloped me. Simultaneously, from the opposite direction, two familiar figures from my school textbooks emerged. The horror novelist Edgar Allan Poe and former President John Quincy Adams. The voice of Dr. Poe resonated, revealing that both men had been patients at the hospital. Poe had been discovered delirious on a street and admitted to the mental institution, while President Adams had met his end in the Philadelphia hospital. Poe in poverty, Adams in wealth. My head spun as if intoxicated. For the first time in my life, I fainted! Now, seated on the street, confusion reigns. How did I arrive at the Pennsylvania hospital? The memory of waking up in the cemetery eludes me. Was I found and transported here by someone else? The questions linger as I reflect on the past 2 hours. Though my tale might sound far-fetched, I swear it is the truth. I do not wish to live a life of poverty, homelessness, or face imprisonment for crimes. The fear of being perceived as crazy and the anguish of loneliness plague me. I yearn for health, financial stability, and happiness. The ghosts I encountered, Mr. Stephen Girard, Mr. Robert Morris, Dr. Kirkbride, Benjamin Franklin, Dr. Thomas Bond, President John Quincy Adams, and Edgar Allan Poe. Could they be sent to inspire me? Uncertain of the source of this inspiration, I contemplate seeking help at the hospital. What kind of help? I do not know, but I sense a need for guidance. Like so many confused and frightened teenagers, a yearning for a happy home, nourishment, a comfortable bed, and healthy companionship echoes within me. Success and financial security seem distant, and the repeated question of how haunts my thoughts. Perhaps the apparitions were messengers sent to motivate me, but I remain clueless about their origin. In my desperation, I long to call my grandmother, a beacon of inspiration and a phenomenal high school American economics history teacher. Memories flood in of her monthly routine, picking up her paycheck, gathering me for weekends filled with delicious dinners, popcorn, and movie nights, alternating between ghost stories and history films. Now I stand at a crossroads, wishing for guidance from those who might hear my story. I yearn for direction in shaping my life, just as my grandmother would have provided, were she still with me. I'm not going back to that cemetery, that's for sure. But maybe I'll go back tomorrow to the first bank in America and see if the ghost of Mr. Stephen Girard is still at the window. He was like I am now, a loser. Then he became a billionaire and community humanitarian. And maybe I can. Maybe I can become someone special. But right now, I need something to eat and a place to sleep. I don't have the energy to do any begging or sleep in the street. One thing I know for sure from this past 2 hours, that knowing how to make and handle and use money with smarts and common sense is 1,000 times better than growing up to be a financial failure.
From all realms, we wish to thank Heritage Bank, Sierra Association of Foster Families, Kid-Centric LLC, Joseph, Jude, Eleanor, and Stuart for both their practical and, should I say, mystical, magical, and mysterious talents.